Gracie Jiu-Jitsu rocks. Welcome to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast, a podcast dedicated to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and all things Gracie, including self-defense, competition, anti-bullying, women's self-defense and empowerment, nutrition, and most especially, the people involved in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. This podcast is for the average Joe. It's for anyone who practices, trains, teaches, or just loves to talk about or hear about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. We'll explore the lives of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, how they got involved in the art, and what effect it's had on their lives. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to episode 21 of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast. As always, I'm your host, Marty Josie, and thanks for listening. Today I'll be doing things a little bit different because this podcast episode is a little longer than the normal length of the episodes. So we're going to skip the product review and talking about anything going on in the jiu-jitsu world and leave a lot more time for the actual interview. But we will start with the jiu-jitsu quote, and that is, "Jiu-jitsu is for the protection of the individual, the older man, the weak, the child, the lady, and the young woman, anyone who doesn't have the physical attributes to defend themselves." And that, of course, is from the late, great Grandmaster ONeil Gracie. Okay, so very excited about my guest today, Mr. Ed ONeil, who not only is a very accomplished actor, you may know him as the character Al Bundy in Married with Children, or Jay Pritchett on the show Modern Family. He's also been in countless movies as well as plays. And what you might not know is that he's a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belt through the Gracie Academy. I know you're going to enjoy the interview. During the interview, Ed talks about how he got started in jiu-jitsu, what that journey's been like for him, how he got started in acting, shares a few stories and that. And then he shares a lot of stories about his time with ONeil Gracie as well. So without further ado, let's talk to Ed. My guest today is Mr. Ed ONeil. So welcome and thank you for being with us, Ed.
Hey, my pleasure.
I got to say, I'm really excited about talking with you today. I've been a big fan of yours for many, many years. Big fan of your work, starting with when Married with Children first came out, all the way through your movie career, and of course now with your latest show, Modern Family. And when I learned that you were a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belt and been training for many years, of course, I became even more of a fan. Most people know you through your roles of course, Married with Children and Modern Family, but a lot of people don't know that you're a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belt and been training for many, many years. Yeah. So if you would, share with us that whole story of how you got introduced to it and what that journey's been like for you throughout the years.
Well, I was living in Venice, California, on the canals over there, and I was primarily, my sole source of exercise was handball. Four-wall handball. I started playing handball back in Ohio, and then when I moved to New York, I played handball just stay fit. I liked the game. And then when I came to Venice, I was playing 3-ball, which is outside at Venice Beach. So that was it for me, and I was, I guess, 40. And I had a background in football and baseball and that sort of thing. But I had a friend, a guy by the name of John Milius, who was a writer, producer, director. I think he wrote, Apocalypse Now, Jeremiah Johnson, The Wind and the Lion, many, many wonderful movies. And so I worked with him, and he told me that he was taking this thing called jiu-jitsu down in Torrance with this Brazilian family, and that I should meet them. And at the time, I wasn't really interested in it. For me, martial arts was always kind of, I didn't really think much of it. Like pajamas and little guys jumping around and yelling. Like Bruce Lee yelling and and the karate movies and the fantastical, flying practically.
Sure.
So I never thought anything of it, and I always was a fan of boxing or collegiate wrestling as something legitimate. And so I kept putting them off. I kept saying, I'm busy now, John. It's all the way down in Torrance. That's a long way to go. So this went on for a couple of years. And he kept badgering me because he was taking it with his son, Ethan. And Ethan, I think, became a purple belt under Hoist. So finally I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll meet you down there. I'll go down, I'll check it out. So he wanted to pick me up. And I said, no, just give me the directions, because I wanted to be able to get out of there, if I wanted to. So I drove down, I found the place, I got there, and he was already having a class with Jorge and Gracie. And I looked in through the window, this was when it was on Carson. So this was 28 years ago. So I was watching them, and I thought, I don't know what they're doing. They're rolling around, and they got those white pajamas on. And the place looked clean. I remember thinking, gee, it's really clean. And so I watched, and I think 15 minutes they were finished, and I was introduced to Horian, and I said how nice the place looked and everything, and heard a lot about you and your family, and then he said, well, I want to give you a free class. And I said, no, I really can't. I got to go because it's going to be rush hour traffic now. I'll have to get a motel room if I don't leave now. Right. And because I really didn't want to do it. And he said, oh, no, come on, just 15 minutes. So I really felt like I couldn't say no. At that point, it would have been rude because, okay. So they got me a gi with the white belt. And I remember back in the dressing room, I was thinking, geez, man, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. And I came out, and he said, I want you to lay down on your back, and I'm going to sit on top of you. And then, you try to get out. Do you think you could get me off? And I said, I don't know. And I'm looking at the guy, and I'm thinking, he's about 170 pounds. And at that time, I was probably about 225. And I thought, well, I said, if all I have to do is get you off of me, I could probably do it if my life depended on it. I'm thinking I was a rookie with the Steelers, as a linebacker.
Right.
This guy's not going to be able to hold me down. He's a little skinny guy. So he said, well, that's all you have to do. Just get me off, and then that'll be one of two parts. So I said, okay, well, how do you want to go about it? He said, just whenever you want to. Just throw me off. But really try. So I said, okay. Well, he said, whenever you're, so I just bucked up, and, I did whatever I was, exploding, trying to get him off. And I couldn't get him off. So now, 10 seconds maybe, I'm gasping for air, So he says, okay, rest, breathe. And I'm thinking, how the hell did he do that? And then he said, okay, now I want you to lie down, and he said, I'll lie down and you get on top of me. So I did. I sat on top of him, and he said, can you hold me down for 4 seconds? Your life depends. I said, yeah, 4 seconds.
No problem, right?
4 seconds.
Yeah.
So He said, that's all you have to do. And I'm thinking, well, there's a trick here somewhere, but so I sit on him and I grab him by his shoulders, and he says, come on, Ed, harder, like a man, So, of course, I'm going right into, I'm falling right into the trap,
Sure.
I get reeled down, I become one with him,
Yeah.
and then go boom, boom, he's on top of me, like 1 second,
Man.
And I said to him, how'd you do that? He said, well, that's kind of what we do, I said, okay, now I got to learn this.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, but he kind of like played it off, like, I hear this all the time, you're an actor, you maybe come a couple of times. I said, that's okay, just sign me up. I'll be back. So I think it was like the next week, I kind of made a schedule, and that was it. I went, and that started in 28 years ago.
Wow.
And I never stopped going.
Incredible.
Because I mainly, I went through the whole thing where I started in the classes, and then I went with the different, purple belts, and with privates. Then I went to, with hoists. I had a couple with Hoiler. I had maybe 10 or 12 with the old man, Elio.
Yeah.
I had the other brother, who was from Spain, whose name I'm kind of blocking on now. He came in for a while. I worked with him, and then finally I started mainly with Horian, who I'm still with, because we're both old now, And but it's been great, because I don't think I'd still be going if I hadn't have had such a good relationship with the family. They've become like such good friends. So that helped keep me, wanting to see them, and I was always I just was fascinated with the whole thing,
Right. Being so close to the family over the years, you really got kind of an inside view of watching some of the younger ones grow up, like Henner and Hedron.
Well, you can imagine when I started, Henner was like 4.
Wow.
Hedron was 5 or 6, and by the time they got to be 8 or 9, I was rolling around with them a little bit like just as little kids, And I remember one time, I think I was rolling with Hedron, and Horian said, Ed, take it easy. He's just a little kid. Now, in my mind, I was going easy, but, I was so much heavier, that you have to be careful with an 8-year-old. But I always say I'm so happy I was nice to them,
Yeah.
And as they started to get older, I don't know the ages where they started to get like Horian would describe, like wolf pups. You got to be careful because they bite.
Yeah.
And but at some point, and they were young. They started tapping, pretty much everybody that was there. They had a lot of students. They got, and the thing of it is, they go every day. They're there every day.
Yeah, they really live it for sure.
Yeah. So, they do it in the morning, they go home, they eat lunch, they take a nap on the floor, they get back up, they start working. Sometimes they'll show each other techniques in the living room, then they go back to the academy, and they have the night classes. They're there like 24/7.
So what was it like when you finally earned your black belt?
Well, you know what? That was really a surprise to me because I didn't expect it. You see, and I know people say that, but in my case, I had a brown belt for a long time, and I had no stripes on it. All my other belts, I had the stripes that would come to 4, and then you'd say, well, now I'm almost to purple. I've got 4 stripes on the blue. So I had no stripes for a long time, and I was just thinking, well, I'll probably never get the black belt because, I'm just, I'm not good enough, and I'm too old, and I'm, whatever. I was okay with it. I didn't really think too much about it. My whole thing was getting in the door on the day I was supposed to train. Just walk in and the rest takes care of itself. So Horian said to me, I want you to do me a favor. We're having a belt ceremony tonight, and would you come because the guys like it when you're there? There's a lot of guys there. They bring their wives and their kids and their families, and when you come there, they take pictures. They like it.
Sure.
And I said, sure, okay, but Yeah, there's going to be 100 some people there. He said, I'll tell you what, we'll have a class first, and then we'll do the belt ceremony. So I said, okay. So I'm thinking I'll stay for a little bit and sneak out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do the Irish exit, as they used to call it.
Right.
So I do my class with Horian, and then the belt ceremony starts, and I said, 115 people here. You know, this is going to be forever. So I thought, I got to get out of here. So I'll do my due diligence here a little bit, and, you know, and then I'll make my exit, you know. So before I could do that, Horian came over to me and said, Ed, you have to stay till the end because we have to take pictures with everybody who gets the belts. So I just sat there. Now, I know of all the guys that are getting the black belts because they went through all the belts, blue, purple, brown. Now they're to black. And they're going to give, I think they were going to give 5 or 6. I don't know exactly how this went down, but I know all the guys that are getting them. And I'm sitting there, and they start giving them out, Guido and different guys. And I thought, now, wait a minute, where's the other one coming from? You know, there's 5, I know, but who's the 6th? So I'm thinking, well, maybe it's a Brazilian or somebody who's come in, you know, that they know that, you know. And I, for sure, didn't think it was me because I had no stripes. So in my mind, it was impossible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm just sitting there thinking, all right, who's the 6th guy? And then I think it was Henner started talking about the 6th guy, and right away it became obvious that he was talking about me.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my God, it's me. And so they called me up, you know, and I thought, holy God. So I got it. I think I said, they wanted me to say a few words. I think I said something like, this only took me 16 years. This must come naturally to me.
Right. I've heard you say that.
But I don't remember exactly. I didn't have, you know, too much to say because I was so stunned in having received it. And then later, I asked Horian, I said, how could I get a black belt with no stripes on a brown? And he said, the stripes were in my head. He said, I didn't want to start giving you stripes because when you start getting near a black belt, sometimes then it influences everything the wrong way.
Mm.
So he said, you were better off just thinking you were never going to get it.
Wow.
You train better.
That's really cool.
Yeah. They have all kinds of these little things they do.
Yeah. Wow, what a great
so
story.
That was a big, big thrill. I mean, I was over the moon. I mean, I considered it the greatest accomplishment ever.
Wow.
You know, because, I mean, it took me 16 years. No, wait a minute. Was it 16? Have I had it that long? I don't even know, because I say I've been training since I was 40, and now I'm 68, so, yeah. I've had it for 12 years.
And blood, sweat, and tears to get it, right?
Oh, yeah.
To earn it.
I mean, you know, and injuries, and, I mean, they're not easy to get, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Not with those guys.
Sure. Not with those guys, for sure. And you've had, on occasion, to actually have to use it in real life, right?
I have, not for a while, but, you know, I did have a couple of occasions where I used it, and, you know, it works. You know, that's the one thing I can tell you for sure.
Right.
And there was one guy I choked, you know, with a rear naked choke. And then there was another guy just pulled the guard and you know, just held him till they just broke it up.
Right.
And so, you know, closed guard.
Absolutely.
It was great. I mean, it was like effortless, you know, like, can lay here all day with this idiot, you know.
Yeah. Didn't feel threatened at all.
No. That's awesome. That's the great thing about it. I mean, it changes your whole outlook on everything, you know, how you deal in those kinds of situations. Whereas before, I probably would have been throwing punches, you know? Right.
Well, and that's an important thing you just said, is that it changes kind of everything and your confidence, and that brings to mind kids as well. And I believe that you have a daughter or daughters that do jiu-jitsu as well, right?
Well, you know what? Actually, that's not accurate. I have 2 daughters. One is 15 and one is 8. The 15-year-old didn't want to do jiu-jitsu because she's, you know, into ballet and
sure
and singing and acting, and so she didn't want to roll around with a lot of guys, you know. So, but my 8-year-old is chomping at the bit to do it. But the problem, and she had a couple of classes here at my house. We had, I think it was, Huron was here. And we had the mats out. She loved it, She did the hooks and rolling around and all that, But unfortunately, right now, she's got so much on her plate. She's got chorus and ballet and horseback riding and tennis and school. So we're trying to find time to get her out there on like a Saturday morning or something, for the kids. Mm-hmm. But she's wanting to do it, and she'd be good because she's a real good athlete. But that's
I can relate to that.
So I don't have the kids doing it.
Okay. Well, I can certainly relate to that. I have a daughter, and she loved all the stuff I exposed her to, like all the different moves and games. But with so much going on, we've kind of gotten away from that. But got to get back into doing that because it's so important.
Absolutely.
Sure. So you also had a chance to host the Metamoris II event, co-hosted with Henner. And so what do you think, Ed, about how that event is, how it's growing, and what was it like to host that event?
Well, I don't know. I don't think we were. Well, I guess we were hosting. I mean, we were kind of calling the fights. I think it's great. I mean, I think it's really caught on with people. People seem to really enjoy it, and Halleck is just great. I used to train with Halleck. I haven't for a while because, he's so busy. But, I guess when I was maybe a brown belt, I used to take privates with Halleck, and he was great, man. I mean, Halleck's a great guy and so much fun. And always, never hurt me or anything. But
that's always a good thing.
Great. I think the matches are interesting, and, they're more or less for people who kind of know the game. They're not, it's not like a UFC thing where you really don't have to know a damn thing about anything to watch it and enjoy it because you're seeing pure carnage, kicking and striking and, all that. And this is a little bit more technical, this is grappling, and there's a lot of techniques that are employed that the average person, wouldn't necessarily know what's going on. But for people who know the grappling game, it's something to be really looked forward to,
Absolutely.
I love calling the thing with Henner. The funniest thing, though, is, and I guess it's human nature, that my problem with that particular evening was that they have a trailer outside, so you got headphones on. They've got a director out there and a bunch of cameras, and they're directing, they're like giving you advice on what to do. Because I had never called a fight before.
Right.
And I've always thought most people who call fights are horrible. I mean, I don't want to get personal, but I mean, most of the people that call fights, UFC fights, boxing, horrible. I mean, they tell you what you don't need to hear. They just keep talking, and and especially if a fight is boring, they'll start trying to make it more interesting somehow. Well, how are you going to do that? If it's boring, it's boring. You're watching it. It's boring,
Right.
So I wasn't, and that particular night, there were quite a few fights that there wasn't a lot of action. And they kept saying from the booth, say this, say that, say this, say that. And finally I say, shut up. Shut up. There's nothing going on.
That's great.
You know what I mean? So I don't think they wanted me to do that again.
So that was it, huh?
Because I don't like that.
You didn't want to play the game so much, right?
Huh?
You didn't want to play the game so much.
No, I mean, for me, I can understand a little bit of that.
Sure.
It's that old expression, they've got to sell their fish. But if nothing's going on, I'm not going to start doing a tap dance,
Right.
I'm just going to say, there's not much happening now, and that's not what they want to hear, I understand.
Sure. So let's switch gears here for a minute, Ed, and I want to talk about kind of where you grew up and how you got your start or break into acting. But in looking into this, I found out something about you. You mentioned the football a minute ago, and I was surprised to learn that you attended college on a football scholarship and were signed by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah,
so
I played.
That's really cool.
I played for two different colleges. Youngstown. I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, which is a steel mill town. It's like right on the Pennsylvania border. It's industrial, football was very, very big in that area. So if you were a young guy and you could play anything, you usually played football. And I was undersized as a young kid, and I spent a tremendous amount of time trying to build myself up, with weights and all sorts of exercise. And I finally, by the time I got to be a senior, I think I was about 180 pounds. But I was in great shape. At 180, I was 6'1", and I finally was able to play my senior year, and I had a good year. And I was also on a team that was sort of a powerhouse in the area. It was a big football school. So I did pretty good my senior year and won a few awards and that sort of thing. And then I got on to a kind of a half-ass scholarship at Ohio University, in where you have to do a board job, and it's a half scholarship, and then they say, well,
right.
If you do good, depending on what they determine is good, you're going to get that full scholarship. So that didn't work out too well for me. I never really did have an easy relationship with coaches for some reason, which was a whole other long story. But I played my freshman year. I started, and then this is at Ohio U in Athens, Ohio, not Ohio State, to be confused with Ohio State in Columbus. The smaller school was in the Mid-American Conference. Good football, though.
Yeah.
And then spring ball, I was starting on the varsity, which is really good for a freshman, because in those days freshmen couldn't play varsity. You had to be a sophomore. So I was going into my sophomore year, and in spring football I was starting middle guard on defense. And so now I'm thinking, well, now I've got my scholarship. I can't be starting and not have the full scholarship. And then right at the end of the spring, with about a week to go, they put me on second team. And then with about 3 days to go, I went to third team. And in my mind, there was no reason for it, other than to keep me from that full scholarship,
Right.
To say, well, we can't give it to you now because you're not first string. And that really irked me.
Sure.
Because, and you're going to have to take my word on it, the guys in front of me weren't as good. And so that pissed me off to the point where I quit. I mean, I told the coach, I'm out of here. So I went back to Youngstown, and I had to sit out a year. And then I played for Youngstown State University for 2 years. And then my senior year, the Steelers got a hold of me. Chuck Noll's first year, by the way. So we're talking about 1968.
Wow.
And he said, we'd like you to come down and try out for outside linebacker. And so I went down there and I met with them and had a nice day. I'm thinking, man, I went down with a friend of mine, and I'm meeting the Rooneys and Chuck Noll. And I remembered Chuck Noll because he was a messenger guard with the Cleveland Browns. And so this was the year before Terry Bradshaw came in, because they had a guy from Notre Dame named Terry Hanratty, who was an All-American quarterback at Notre Dame, great player. He was a rookie with me, and so I tried that, and I didn't make the team. And the reason I didn't make the team was because I had never played outside linebacker before. That was not a position we had at Youngstown State, because we played a 5-4 defense, which is, there was no middle linebacker. There were 2 inside linebackers, and that was it,
Yeah.
And so it was a position that I wouldn't recommend trying to make a pro football team and learn a position at the same time. It's not good. I'd say, what? I'm supposed to be where?
That's funny.
So that was it. And I tell a story that I was cut by the Pittsburgh Steelers the day that Neil Armstrong walked on the moon.
Wow. Interesting.
That's a true story. And the day that I got cut, Chuck Knoll called me into his office, and he could not have been nicer, and all that. And he said, look, I know this is a new position, and this is a difficult situation. And I said, yeah. He said, but, I've got some guys I know down with the Philadelphia Eagles, and they need a lot of help. And if you want me to, I can make that happen. You can drive down Route 80, it's right down the road, to Philadelphia. And this was like, right after I was cut. I mean, I was standing in his office, and I said to him, I just made this spur-of-the-moment decision. I said, you know what, Chuck, I'm done with football. And I kind of was, I had played for 2 colleges. I played high school. I played ever since I was a little kid, and I was kind of sick of it. And I had a couple knee injuries that weren't doing me any good. And I just thought, I'm tired of hanging around with football players. I want to get out of here, And I was relieved to be cut in a funny way.
Wow. Time to move on, right?
So that was it. I never saw Chuck again, but I hope, I held nothing against him. I mean, I understood. He basically said, look, I can't, I have to come out of the gate strong. It's my first year here, I got to have people that have experience in this position.
Sure.
I said, well, that makes sense. So that was it.
Well, it was an interesting chapter for sure, but it was time to transition from there. So how did that lead into, or how did you transition into acting?
Well, I ended up when I was at Ohio U, one of my best friends down there was a guy named Sammy Angot, and his dad, Sammy Angot Sr., had been lightweight champ of the world in boxing from, I believe, 41 to 44. He's in the Hall of Fame. You can Google the guy.
Wow.
Sammy Angot. And first man ever to beat Willie Pep, fought Robinson 3 times in over-the-weight matches. I mean, this was a great fighter.
Yeah, it sounds like
he was from Little Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, but Sammy grew up in Massillon, Ohio. That's where they finally ended up, the family. So Sammy was a short relief pitcher for the Pirates, and I was trying out for the Steelers. So, we were like buddies. And he got in a motorcycle accident and broke his right wrist so badly that he couldn't throw the curve anymore, So they let him go. And so me and Sammy were at, just floating around, and we decided to go to Florida. So we drove down to Florida, and we got jobs in Fort Lauderdale. I was bellhopping in a hotel. He was working as a cocktail guy in a hotel bar. And we were just beach bums,
Yeah, I grew up in Florida.
Yeah, well, we lived on East Las Olas, and I worked at the Galt Ocean Mile Hotel, and he worked at the Lauderdale Beach Hotel as a cocktail waiter. And, we had our days down, we were just bumming on the beach,
Right.
We're having a good time. And one night, we had dates, and we went to an outdoor park, and we were smoking marijuana on a blanket. Now, I had never smoked it much,
Right.
This was new to me, and I didn't like it. It made me paranoid.
Yeah.
And so while I was just there thinking, I don't like this, there was an outdoor play going on, some community theater thing. And, it was like, I'm going to say it was Oklahoma or some musical or something. And I was on the blanket, and I said to the 3 people there, Sammy and the 2 girls, I said, I could do better than these guys. And he started laughing, what, now you're an actor? I said, well, I did a little bit. I had done a couple of plays in high school, but I was roped into it, by the nun,
Right.
And I said, yeah, but they're no good, I just was talking out of my ass, but I must have halfway believed it, So when we left Florida and I got back to Youngstown with no direction whatsoever, I think I saw an ad in the paper at the Youngstown Playhouse for a play. I think it was The Rainmaker, and I had seen the movie with Burt Lancaster. And I thought, I can do this, And I went out there. I drove out there for an audition, and I was horrible. I was trying to imitate Burt Lancaster.
Oh,
I didn't know
funny.
a thing, And then, they said, thank you very much, and that was the end of that. And then a couple of months later, I saw another ad for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This was before the movie, but I had read the book. See, I did a lot of reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I had read the book by Ken Kesey. It was one of my favorites. And I said, well, I'm perfect for, Randall McMurphy, which is the lead. So out I go again, and again, terrible. But the guy who was directing said, now, I see you're trying hard, and of course you're probably trying too hard, but I think you may have some potential, and there's a little play here that's going to start in a couple of weeks on the lesser stage. They had a couple of theaters. On the small stage, and it's a classic. It's called Antigone, and I could put you in as like I think it was a Greek thing, as a guard, as a soldier, basically a spear carrier.
Right.
And I, of course, I leaped at it. I think I had like 3 lines. And that's how I got started in the plays, and I really liked it. And so I took that one experience where I was literally a soldier holding a spear. I marched down to Youngstown State University, walked right into the theater department, demanded to see the dean of theater, a guy by the name of William Holsupple, walked in and told him I was an actor and that I wanted to get into the acting classes at the university. And he said, well, you missed the beginning course. That was last semester. And now we're into the advanced acting. I said, well, I'm an advanced actor.
You're like, I'm way beyond that.
I mean, and he was amused, he said, this kid is...
That's
now,
great.
I think I was at the time about 23 or 4 years old. So I was older than most of the students, And so he didn't have many guys that looked like me, There were a lot of gay guys in it. There weren't too many guys like me. So he obviously thought, well, I can use this guy, and he can be the bad guy, he can be whatever, So they put me in the advanced acting class where I was completely lost, trying to do monologues, and I didn't have a clue. But I stuck with it, and pretty soon I was doing some lead roles, and I was a pretty fast study because I really liked it, and I was fascinated. Like jiu-jitsu, I've always been that way. If I found something I liked, I stayed with it, and I was kind of like relentless. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I would just stay with it and
persevere.
Try to get better, and that's what I did. And then just to cap this off, we had quite a few good actors in that program for whatever reasons. And when we were coming to the end of it for the seniors, at one of the parties, the conversation came up like, what are we going to do now, And almost every one of them were applying at small colleges to teach acting, in small schools around the country. I said, why would you want to do that? We're performers. We're not teachers. Why would I want to teach this? I'm going to New York. They thought I was insane. And so I started thinking, well, maybe I'm nuts. I'm the only one that's going to go. And they said, what the odds are there? Are you crazy? The best actors in the whole country, in the world.
That says a lot about you, though. When so many people aren't willing to do that, and you're like, hey, I'm doing it. It says a lot about me in a couple of different ways. Right.
One of the ways that would not be considered flattering was that I was naive to the point where I never even thought about the odds. The fantastic odds against a guy, not a kid. Going up there and, anyway. I didn't go right away. I hung around, and I thought, well, because I was living with a woman, and young woman, and she didn't want me to go, and so that kind of, I was thinking maybe I'm going to get married, and I thought, yeah, but what am I going to do? I don't have, I don't have any kind of real job, bartending, So that took me a while to finally say, I'm out of here, And when the relationship went south and there was nothing holding me, I went to New York. By the time I got to New York, I was 30. So, I basically spun my wheels in Youngstown for 5 years because I liked Youngstown. All my friends were there, and I probably was a little afraid of going up there, and I kept doing plays, in the local area. And then I went up, and
the rest is history.
Yeah, sort of. Well, it was fun though. It was exciting.
I bet, and I admire your take life by the horns and go for it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I had this kind of simple mantra. There was like I said, well, I can always go home. You can always, if it gets too rough or you can't do it, you can just go home. And then after a while in New York, I kept thinking, well, I can't go home. There's nothing to go home to.
Right.
So I think it can be said that if there's no backup, if you don't have a backup, sometimes that's the best.
Kind of like burn the boats.
Well, they call that, in war, they call that the kill zone. When those guys landed on the beach, for example, Normandy or Iwo Jima, and they dumped them out of those water boats, they couldn't retreat.
Yeah.
Well, behind them was the ocean.
Yeah, literally do or die.
It was basically kill or be killed. Mm-hmm. And not to say that my situation was anywhere near that dramatic, but to make the point, when I went there with no backup plan, in other words, you can't go home. You had to stay and find a way. So there was no taking no for an answer,
Right.
And I mean, believe me, I met so many actors who had backup plans, because they had educations or they had, parents in a business or they had another idea of what they could do, with their life other than that. And believe me, almost every single one of them took it eventually, the backup plan.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of people that actually make it big, but
no, the ones
certainly
that
a success story.
Every one of them were like me, where they would say, this is it.
This is it. That's great. I really appreciate you sharing that story. I saw one of your lesser-known movies recently, or at least I think it's lesser-known. I had never heard. I was completely surprised you were in it. I recently ran a marathon, my first and only marathon, by the way, and gearing up for that and training, because I'm not a big runner by any means, but gearing up for it, I went on to Netflix and I was looking for some inspiration, some motivation, and was looking for documentaries or movies on running, and I came across the movie Prefontaine about the American long-distance runner Steve Prefontaine, and I was like, boom, there you were in it. I was like, whoa, didn't expect it.
Yeah, that was directed by a really good guy, Steve James, I think his name is. And Steve was a documentary filmmaker. That was his claim to fame. He did a very famous documentary called Hoop Dreams, which you should get sometime and take a look at it.
Yeah, I've heard the name, but I've never
it was about
seen
some black kids in the inner city, and he followed them all the way through, I guess, junior high, through high school, and into the college level basketball. And it was very, very good. And so that was fun. It was a low-budget movie. They did 2 movies on Prefontaine. The one was the Tom Cruise produced movie that was a much bigger budget than the one that I did with Steve. But ours was pretty good. I mean,
it was great.
We did all right with it. Jared Leto, I think, played Prefontaine. And it was interesting because I got to meet his family. His sister, his mother was still alive, and I think the father was dead. But I met his mother and a lot of his friends and a lot of the guys that ran track with him.
Wow, that's cool.
He was quite a character, that guy.
Yeah, it seeed. Yeah.
A tremendous competitor,
It was very inspirational, for sure.
Yes. Sure. Yeah, and we shot that up in Seattle, the Seattle area. we weren't into Oregon. We used a school up there for Oregon,
Well, as I said before, been a huge fan of your work long term. Loved Married with Children, your character Al Bundy, and then of course I'm really enjoying your current role in Modern Family. What's the most enjoyable thing for you about doing Modern Family, Ed?
Well, it's a great job. We have the three families that are related, but they're interconnected, but they're also separate. So the workload is good. We only work maybe 2.5 days a week because while they're shooting the other two families, we're off.
Oh, that's good.
It's great. And it works good because, when we do all come together, it's usually, Christmas show or Halloween or Thanksgiving. And then we have long days. But other than that, it's pretty easy. The two executive producers, the guys who created the show, Chris Lloyd, Steve Leviton, are really, really good. And, Chris Lloyd's father wrote Frasier and The Mary Tyler Moore Show and Golden Girls, and Steve Leviton wrote Just Shoot Me and a number of other good shows. And
yeah,
the writing is very sharp and I think brilliant.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. The writing is awesome.
The writing is awesome, and the cast is great. I mean,
yes, for sure.
Without talking about myself, everybody else in it is just amazing to me, and it's just we get along well, and we're having a ball. We're into our halfway through our 6th year, and we've won Best Comedy 5 years in a row.
Yeah, it really is an awesome show. One of my favorite episodes, Ed, was when you broke out the Monteleone,
yes.
the rear naked choke, lion killer. Was that your idea? Was that your idea?
That was sort of my idea because the show was about Jesse trying to learn how to fight.
Right.
And then he was going to come to me, and and so I said, well, we should use the Gracie stuff,
Absolutely.
And that was funny when I choked him out accidentally, And it's funny because I had to be careful. You put that thing on to make it look real.
Uh-huh.
You want to make sure you're not really squeezing, because the old man. It's a funny thing about jiu-jitsu. There's a lot of guys, and I guarantee that there are black belts who, if you sit down in front of them or get on your knees and you say, "Get me in a choke," do the pull the lapel back and slide it front choke.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them don't know how to do it right. Black belts.
Wow.
It's just little things that make it work,
Yeah.
And it's the same for every choke. The old man used to say, if you're squeezing hard, you're doing it wrong. In other words, once you get the choke and you get it properly, you just let the choke work itself. You don't have to do a whole lot,
Yeah. It should feel almost effortless when you get it there right.
It should be effortless. I mean, not effortless, but
but
much less than you see these guys cranking like they're trying to pop the guy's head off.
Right.
And then, God forbid, the guy gets out and they're shredded, Their fingers are shot,
Yeah. Yep.
So, that was the thing that the old man used to stress a lot, because he wasn't a real strong guy. Although he did have enormous wrists and big hands. And so sometimes I think, he's stronger than you guys think.
Right.
And the other thing that made him stronger was the fact that his technique was so perfect that everything applied was the right way. You know what I mean? Which exponentially boosts the strength of the move. You know what I mean?
Right, yes.
Like a real strong guy doing the technique wrong, there's not much effect. But a guy doing it perfect, it doesn't take long. You're going to tap,
Yeah. A little guy can't just muscle through it.
No,
a big guy might be able to, but if they've got the right technique and all the leverage, then that's it.
Exactly, and that was the old man's whole thing. If you were doing something with him and he would say, "Oh, forza," and I'd say, "That's not a compliment, right?" And it's no, too much strength.
That's funny.
I'll tell you another funny thing about him.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was having a class with him, and he had me in his closed guard, and he had one hand in the collar, and I got a little bit lazy with blocking the other arm, because it felt like he was dead. There was nothing coming from him, and
right.
I did something. I kind of let go of it for a second to do something, and he shot it in, And as he was shooting the arm up, I kind of caught it real close to my neck, But now my arm is bent, my right arm. And I'm pushing it away. Now, I'm stronger than him. So I was able to do it. So he said something like, pua or something, And I said, how can you defend an attack without using any strength? Because I don't know I don't know what you're talking about there. And he said this through an interpreter. Hoyler was in the room. Mm-hmm. and I can understand some Portuguese, but he said, you don't defend the attack. You defend the preparation for the attack.
Mm.
Now, see, that's one step further down. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So I had never heard that before. You probably never did either.
Nope.
So what's he talking about? Okay, this is what he's talking about. If the guy is sliding his hand up your lapel, right? One hand helps the other, right?
Right.
Open the lapel, the thumb goes over the top, and he's sliding up to your neck. As that hand is sliding up, your right hand should be going to his bicep, so that when your hand touches his bicep, your arm is locked out. So now you have leverage. He can't choke you with one hand. But if you wait until his other hand starts up and you stop it halfway up, your arm is bent. Now you have to use strength to keep him from getting the other hand in, or you got a dogfight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But if his one hand is going in, your other hand stops the other arm, and you lock it out, you don't have to be a strong guy to keep that arm from getting up there. You see what I mean?
Absolutely.
Now, the old man did that in everything that he did. Now, that being said, that takes knowledge, and that comes with a lot of training. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But that's the thing you should always keep in mind when you train, is to anticipate what they want and stop it before it starts.
That's great.
And that's what the old man was so great at. He knew what you wanted before you knew what you wanted.
Mm. And like you said, that comes with the years of experience to have the knowledge, but also that sensitivity.
Absolutely.
To just
and he had all sorts of traps. He could walk you into all sorts of traps. Like, he used to know, for example, if he had you in the closed guard and you started to try to pass, he would lead you into a choke because he knew where the holes were. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And he never attacked until there was a hole. And then it was like a Venus flytrap. Bang! And it's too late. You never saw it coming. You didn't feel it coming.
And that's the real essence of his jiu-jitsu.
That's the purity of it. He used to say, if it's hard, it's wrong. It's got to be easy. Every move you make has got to be easy.
Beautiful.
Yeah. He did a thing one time where I was in his closed guard, and he kept putting his foot on my hip, and I couldn't stop it. It would just be there all of a sudden, and I would adjust my body, when he put the foot on the hip, he would turn, to get an angle, and I would adjust. So I thought, well, I'm countering it beautifully, and he used to say, whenever I'd counter it, he'd say, too late, in Portuguese, too late, too late, too late. And finally I said, what are you talking about? He said, my foot should not ever get to your hip. I said, oh, how does that work, So then he told me, don't you feel my feet uncrossing behind you? Close your eyes. And I hadn't felt his feet uncross because I was tense.
Yes.
Now, if you try this in your practice the next time, and you have a guy cross his feet in a closed guard and have him uncross his feet, as soon as he uncrosses his feet, if you're aware, you'll feel it.
Yes.
And then if you just bring your elbow down and around, you can pass his guard. Because as his foot's coming to your hip, the elbow around the leg is shorter distance. You can pass his guard every time.
That's great.
But you have to be aware that those feet have just uncrossed. That's why blind people are so good in jiu-jitsu, because they feel everything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We used to train in the dark sometimes. You'd get in a small private room and Hoyan would turn the lights out. You couldn't see a thing. But see, you don't have to because you can feel everything.
Yeah. That's such a great thing to do, too, to develop that sensory, perception and that ability.
It's fun every now and then to do something like that,
Absolutely.
But the old man was just amazing. I mean, I'm just trying to see. He was. I'll tell you one more story about him.
Absolutely.
I came in one day, this was when we were over on Carson, and he was standing in the window looking into the class that was going on. And he was in his gi with his red belt, And I came in, I said, "Bom dia, professore," He said, "Oh, it's campeon." He used to call me campeon,
Nice.
And I said, "How you doing?" And, he just got in. He just flew in from Rio.
That campeon means champion, right?
Yeah, campeon means champion.
Yeah, okay.
So he's watching the class. And the guy teaching the class was a guy by the name of Kaiki. And Kaiki was a black belt with Hickson. And he was Brazilian, and he was a good black belt. This guy was a tough guy. 205 pounds, great condition. And he was teaching a class where he was teaching a sweep. And the sweep, I'm sure you've seen the sweep. You've got the guy in your closed guard. The guy stands up. And when he stands up, you grab the sleeve of his right hand. Because, he's got his hands down on your lapel, right? Mm-hmm. You grab the sleeve and you grab the sleeve with your right hand, and your left hand hooks his right ankle. Mm-hmm. And then you feed the sleeve from your right hand to the left hand. And then you whipsaw your left leg over his arm that you've got trapped now. And it's like an omoplata from a closed guard. When you whipsaw that leg over and you're holding his arm down, he has to roll forward. And you can come up in an omoplata.
Yes.
Okay? So it's a sweep. And it works good.
Yeah.
And so the old man's watching it, right? And Kaiki's demonstrating it. And the old man mutters some curse word in Portuguese under his breath. And I look over at him, and he's pissed off. So now he walks into the room. And Kaiki, "Oh, professore, bom dia," He says, "What are you doing? What is this sweep?" So, "Oh, I teach you this sweep, a good sweep." He said, "Who do you sweep with this sweep?" He said, "I sweep everybody. Everybody I sweep with a sweep." He said, "Sweep me." So now he's at the time, 89. And I see that Kaiki doesn't want to do it, But he said, "No, sweep me. Come on, I get in the guard, get in your guard." He's got like 25 people in the room. And Kaiki's a black belt. The old man stands up. Now, but what he did was, normally when the old man would pass standing up, he would grab the lapels with the thumb forward. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But this time I noticed that he grabbed the lapels with his thumb back towards his hip.
Right.
And he stood up, and he's got both lapels, and Kaiki hooks the ankle, grabs the sleeve, and as soon as he's about to feed it, the old man jams the massapone, in his neck.
Nice.
And I'm talking about hard.
Oh, man.
I mean, just like a punch. Boom.
Yeah.
And Kaiki, looks up and, oh shit, he's got to leave go of the ankle. He's got to block the mouth. He's got to block the choke.
Yep.
So he blocks the choke. So now the old man is looking at him again. He's still got the lapels. He says, "Sweep me again." Kaiki goes, I get it.
Oh, that's great.
And the old man turns around and he says, "I ask you one more time, who you sweep with this sweep? Your move takes 3 parts. My move, 1. You're never going to sweep anybody good with this sweep."
Wow.
And you still see people use that sweep.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're never going to sweep a guy like him. Why? Because he knew what you wanted, but it was too far to go.
Mm-hmm.
If I've got to hook your ankle, grab your sleeve, feed the sleeve to my other hand, whipsaw my leg over, what are you going to do in the meantime? Just stand there and wait?
Right.
You see, the old man was like, bang, over. Or it just stops it completely,
That's awesome.
Isn't that cool?
That's great.
So,
what a great story.
Without that's plenty. I could tell you stories about the old man from here until noon today.
I'm sure. And what a great experience and relationship you sound like you've had with him really influenced your jiu-jitsu,
he
your life.
Used to say to me, like, for example, I used to call him the little alligator. Because you know how alligators would sleep in the mud? You think they're sleeping, but they're not sleeping. They have one eye a little bit open. The old man, that's how he used to roll. It would be like he felt like he wasn't even trying. There was no tension in his body. It was like he was sleeping, but his mind was racing. He was just waiting. Like a little alligator, For you to get that... See, he never wanted to make you feel threatened. He wanted to make you... Even it would go so far as to, like, when he opened the collar and slid his hand in, which he, by the way, only did every single time he ever had you in a guard. Every time he slid that right hand in. But it would feel comfortable. In other words, he made it like a little pillow on the side of your neck. Like you would get seduced by it. You would go, I know this is dangerous, but it feels so good. He never like wrenched it. And you see guys do this all the time. They'll put
your alarm bells go off.
Pull the head down and they'll jerk it back. You're going to say, this guy wants to choke me.
Exactly.
And you're on your highest alert. The old man would put you to sleep. And even though you knew it was dangerous, it's just human nature. After a while, the threat seems to go away. Yeah. And then bang, he had you.
And then he attacks you.
Like if he mounted on you, he would take your, if you were working hard, he would get on top of you. The first thing he did was he would open up your gi and he would fan you with the gi, like cooling you off.
Really?
Yeah, well, he wasn't just cooling you off. He was opening up your gi so he could shoot the double-hand choke. He had a million things like that.
That's so cool. I love hearing about that stuff. That's so cool.
Oh, I love the guy, man. The guy was like just the most amazing guy.
That is really
just
awesome.
A real honor.
Thanks for sharing those stories.
Had the time to, hang out with him, and he had a great sense of humor. His entire life was jiu-jitsu. Everything. He slept, ate, dreamt jiu-jitsu. So
what a great opportunity, right? To learn from him as well as the rest of the family and be influenced with your jiu-jitsu by him.
The best thing, the most fun thing.
Absolutely. Well, just a couple more questions, Ed. I want to respect your time.
Okay.
Could you share with us something about yourself that people would be surprised to learn about or know about you?
The thing of it is, when you've been as in the public eye as I have for so long, really I've been since 1986, the football thing. A lot of people don't know about that. I don't really talk about it that much because it's so long ago. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know about the jiu-jitsu, which I also don't talk about much. You never see me at a UFC fight or sitting with Joe Rogan talking about,
Right.
that is. But, some of the things I could surprise people with, I wouldn't want to tell them.
Keep it under wraps, huh?
Yeah. Well, growing up in Youngstown, it was a crazy place. So there's a lot of that I keep, it's smarter not to mention.
Sure.
Nothing really. I mean, I've got a couple of kids that I'm insane about, and I love doing Modern Family. I'm very lucky in that regard. The jiu-jitsu is probably the best thing I do. I mean, the most fun that I have, and the thing I enjoy the most.
So a couple of things that
I'm pretty much like everybody else, actually.
Yeah?
I mean, I'm a regular person, I don't consider myself any kind of a... Oh, I know. I mean, I'm slightly embarrassed about celebrity. It seems a bit of like a joke almost, but I wouldn't reverse it. So I don't know.
I read where you were almost cast as the role of Sam Malone in the comedy Cheers.
Well, that's true as insofar as they were considering me for it.
Okay.
When I was living in New York City. Because, Sam Malone, the character of Sam Malone originally, and Ted Danson's a friend of mine, but wasn't at that time, was a football player, an ex-football player. That's how the original script was written. And, the coach and a football player have a different relationship. It's quite a bit different than a baseball player and his coach. And why that is, I don't know. But, I mean, I play baseball as well, and it's a much more casual relationship with baseball. It's not so much father-son type thing, or mentor kind of thing.
Yes.
Or a football coach, because they put you through pain, it's probably very similar to a boxing coach. So it's different. So they changed it for whatever reason to baseball when Ted Danson got involved. Now, Ted Danson had already done Body Heat, a movie with William Hurt that was very successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that once he became involved, it was over for me. And that was a great show, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was all. I was just being considered at one point.
Okay. All right, so last thing, and it's kind of a two-part question, Ed. What's the biggest impact that Gracie Jiu-Jitsu's had on you in your life, if you could sum it up? And also, if you could go back and talk with you as a brand new white belt, what advice would you have for yourself, Jiu-Jitsu related? As
a white belt, okay. Well, as far as the impact of Jiu-Jitsu on me, it's just been joy, just so much fun and fascination and curiosity. Learning these wonderful techniques and how to apply them and the Gracie family, getting to know them, and it's just been a wonderful, and getting to know the old man, it just was a wonderful experience. So that's what I'd say about that. If I had advice for white belts, it would be to check your ego at the door, try to breathe and relax as much as you can without again, being that alligator kind of thing. Relax, but pay attention.
Yes.
Don't be so hard on yourself. You know what I mean? Don't expect to get this stuff overnight. And if you make mistakes, so what? I mean, I remember Horian told me one time, he caught me in an arm lock or something, and I was pissed off about it, a little bit anyway. And he said, do you know how many arm locks I've been caught in my life? Thousands. And unless you've been caught in them a lot, you're not going to know how to get out or defend them. You have to get caught. And that's like a lot of guys don't want to be in certain positions. There's a lot of guys, and you'll see this, and I'm sure you know this, there's a lot of guys that always want to be on top. And usually these guys are strong guys. So they can always be on top against, new guys or guys that aren't so accomplished. So they're always on top. They never learn the bottom game. When they're on the bottom, they're basically done. So they get in there with someone really good. They end up mounted, and it's over. Because they can't, you've got to train in all positions. and be comfortable. Get to a point where you're comfortable in all positions. And then the thing that I need a lot of work on, and I try to do it, but it's hard, is to work from the left side. Work your opposite side, you know? Because if you don't, as soon as the guy goes, if you're right-handed, as soon as the guy goes left on you, everything changes.
Sure.
Your reaction time changes. It slows way down. You know what I mean? Like anytime a Hawaiian wants to catch me, he goes left-handed. And I go, oh, shit. You know?
Well, it's one thing to get really good and proficient on one side, but if you don't, if you're not well-rounded, yeah, it's and it's hard. A lot of us,
the other thing too, and of course now I've already given too much advice, but the thing that's so important, and it can't be stressed enough, is the basics. Master the basics, because if you have a good basic understanding, it's very hard to catch a guy with good basics, because they know that they have a good foundation for jiu-jitsu. Because everything is a setup. So if they have really good basics and they understand the basics, they'll be able to defend guys that are much more further along than they are. Because, you know, who's going to catch you in a flying arm lock? You know what I mean?
Right.
All this stuff, it's fancy, but, you know, I mean, the old man was all about basics. Just, you know, master the basics. You can't drill it enough before you get into, you know, go-go platas and, you know, all that crazy stuff they do, you know.
No, that's so true. You know, that's big, and it's basic, and it's so true. And I think the big mistake a lot of people run into, especially just starting out, especially these days, is wanting to get so far ahead of themselves and get fancy,
and they don't have basic jiu-jitsu.
That's so true.
And you know, it's like those guys would say, you know, like the rubber guard and all that stuff they're doing now with the what's the thing where they lock legs and it's called. But again, the old man would never teach anything where you could get punched in the face while you're trying to do it. And in fact, when you rolled with him, if you tried to get him in some kind of leg lock or foot lock, he'd slap you in the face. If you let your face be open to him, he would remind you that could have been a punch.
Right.
And the other thing is, he'd slap you hard so that you go, whoa, up. You know, hey, what are you doing? You're not defending your face. In a street, he was only interested in street fighting, you know, how to defend against a street fight.
Yes.
So if you had a technique that was pure grappling, he would make you pay for it. He would whack you.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that every time you roll, you should be mindful of, you know, am I, could this guy punch me in the face or headbutt me, you know, or elbow me? Because that's what they're going to do in the street.
That's true. That's true.
So, yeah, he was real big on that stuff.
Well, I can't say enough gratitude about you being on the show and sharing all your wisdom, your experience, the great stories, your knowledge. Thank you so much, Ed, for being here. And I know my listeners are really enjoying listening to this. So thank you so much.
Hey, good luck down the line. Have fun.
Thank you. Great respect.
You don't always say, keep it playful.
Keep it playful.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Great respect and long life, great health.
Thank you very much.
Okay, time for the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. Today's quote, "Life is not a stress rehearsal," and that's from Loretta LaRoche. So again, can you keep this brief today for time considerations, but stress is a very big deal in our society, and the accumulation of stress can certainly rob us of our quality of life. So I want to share a quick technique that can help lower or manage your stress. And this is called the red light reframe, or the red light reset, however you want to say it. And it's simply this. Now, none of us like being caught in a red light. It seems like it always happens at the most inopportune time. We're running late, we need to be somewhere, and then boom, there it is, the red light. And if you're like me, that can definitely cause a reaction. So the red light reset is this. From now on, whenever you get caught in a red light, I want you to think of it as a gift. I know that may sound weird at first, but just bear with me. Think of it as a gift from the universe or wherever telling you that you're going too fast. And I don't mean speed-wise, but just going too fast in your life at this moment. So take the opportunity to take some deep breaths, a minimum of 3, up to 10 or more, whatever you have time for during the red light. And I promise this will make a difference. Ever since I started doing this, it's made a huge difference. I will still have an initial very quick reaction of, holy crap, another red light. And then I'll remember to do it, do the breathing, think of it as a gift. And without exception, every time I do this, as the light turns green and I start moving forward, I'm at a lot better, more calm, more focused, more positive and healthier state of mind and ready to face the rest of the day in a much better place. So give this a try. Like I said, I know it can sound a little weird, but I promise you if you try it, you'll benefit greatly from it. And that's going to do it for this episode. As always, thanks so much for tuning in. Please go to our website and leave a comment at www.graciejujitsurocks.com. Love to hear from you if you have any suggestions or feedback. You can also go to iTunes and rate the show as well as leave feedback there. You can also follow us on Twitter. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, I'll see you on the mat.